All right, everyone. Welcome back to the Lock Up Shutdown podcast. My name's Monica. Joining me, as always, is my good friend Zach. How are we doing tonight?
Pretty good. The Ravens come back, though we just watched a little bit ago against the Colts. Always makes the night a little bit better, but
Absolutely. I'm a little
week
bit
5.
disappointed we had to make a comeback, but
Hey,
it is what it is.
every good team has at least one ugly game that they managed to pull out. So good signs for the Ravens. They would have taken a 4-1 start at the beginning of the season, and that's where they are now. So I think John Harbaugh will go to sleep, sleeping well tonight.
All right. Well, tonight we'll talk about the top rookie edge rushers creating nightmares for NFL QBs, the atrocious world of NFL kicking, and whether or not Russell Wilson has still got it. But first, let's go over our biggest surprises from Week 5. Would you like to start us off, Zach?
Yeah, my biggest surprise probably has to be from Sunday night involving the Buffalo Bills and Kansas City Chiefs. I know I said the Chiefs were my preseason Super Bowl prediction, but after 5 games of watching them, I'm still amazed at how far they've managed to fall off from where they were last season.
Really?
And sure, Patrick Mahomes hasn't been great, but my biggest issue has to be their defense that they have out on the field right now.
I mean, we did watch the Super Bowl.
Yeah, that wasn't great, and I know they've never been great defensively, but it seems to have somehow gotten worse, and I think that's contributing to Patrick Mahomes' disappointing play because he feels like he has to get a touchdown every time he steps on the field because he knows his defense is going to give up a touchdown every time they're on the field. So I think that's leading to him making a bit more risky throws and leading to a bad offense as well as a bad defense.
He certainly has looked a little bit sloppy. Personally, my biggest surprise was the fact that the Lions suffered yet another heartbreaker, losing to the Vikings 19-17 on a last-second field goal yet again. I mean,
yeah,
it's hard to say.
It takes a lot for making an NFL coach walk up to a press conference in tears, and Detroit Lions have managed to do that to Dan Campbell after their start to the season this year.
It's hard to say that I'm surprised by how bad the Lions are, but somehow even with that, I'm still surprised by how bad the Lions are. You can't make that kind of thing up.
But it's almost like they're bad, but not bad enough to get blown out. Like, you see the Jaguars get blown out, and Urban Meyer is just like, okay, whatever, we suck. The Lions are there, competing, fighting every game, and then all of a sudden you lose at the last second 2 weeks in a row. The first team in NFL history to lose 2 games on 50-plus yard game-winning field goals, and we're only in Week 5.
It reminds me a lot of the 2017 Browns when they went 0-16. Like, having watched some of those games, they were always fighting it out, but could not win a single game. It was just heartbreak after heartbreak after heartbreak. That's what's happening to the Lions this season, and it's really just... It's hard not to be flabbergasted at how the Lions have been playing this year. It's bad.
It is really bad, but I still don't think they're the worst, and I don't think they're going to go 0-16. So
certainly not.
We'll tough it out now, and I think they'll be all right in the future.
Well, if you made a team of kickers, I'd certainly think they'd be going 0-16 with how bad they've been playing this season. Do teams around the league need to start revamping their kicking personnel after just how badly they've been playing this season, this week?
It's been abysmal, the kicking this season, but I'm gonna stick to my point last week and say that it's not time to go and make sure your team has the best kicker in the league if you want to be successful.
I don't think a team needs to have like the best kicker in the league, but like you don't see kickers get drafted. You usually see them get picked up out of free agency all the time, and these teams are just going through pools and pools of kickers who aren't good.
Yeah, you've got the teams that have found their kickers, like the Falcons and the Ravens and their snares, and then you got teams just playing musical chairs with kickers going different places every week, it seems like. But I think the kicker is going to be frustrating, and occasionally you'll see the game like we saw with the Packers and Bengals where you miss 5 field goals in a row combined. But in a majority of games, I don't think the kicker is going to be the one responsible for winning or losing.
This week, there were 13 missed extra points, adding the miss against the Ravens from Rodrigo Blankenship, which is now the NFL record for the most extra points missed in a week by the collective whole of the NFL. There were 14 total missed field goals in week 5. And again, 5 straight missed field goals in the Packers versus Bengals game. As a person who loves kickers, it's frustrating, but as a person who loves seeing kickers miss, I was laughing through the entire game. It was, you can't keep a straight face watching that.
Yeah, you make Ninja's tweet from 2019 look even better about saying how many people in the U.S. could probably kick a field goal, but I mean, they weren't missing the Blair Walsh type of field goals that the Vikings missed against the Seahawks in the playoffs a few years ago. Those were 40, 50-yard kicks, so I'll give them a little bit of leeway on that one, especially with Mason Crosby being a multi-year veteran and Evan McPherson being a rookie, so maybe not two of the best kickers in the league, and they showed why later on in the game, but Crosby able to bounce back and make his 6th or 7th field goal attempt of the game and win the game for the Packers in overtime.
Absolutely. Personally, I think it's time to start drafting rookie kickers straight out of college, because some of these teams are going to absolutely need it. But for now, let's start spotlighting some of this year's rookies, who aren't kickers unfortunately, but are edge rushers. The JJ Watt type, the TJ Watt type, basically all the Watt type. We're looking for edge rushers. We've got 4 to name this week: Jalen Phillips, Gregory Rousseau, Odafe Owe, and Darrell Taylor, who is leading the league in sacks despite being the Ben Simmons type of rookie. Let's start off with Jalen Phillips. How do you think Jalen Phillips is going to look throughout his career, Zach?
I'll tell you what, right now, any defensive player on the Miami Dolphins doesn't look great. But with all the tackles and the 3 quarterback hits he had against the Colts, I'm expecting a good future for him. He played on over 75% of the Dolphins snap this week against Tampa, but may not be good to be on the field in that game after they gave up 45 points. But in the end, I think he'll be just fine career-wise.
Personally, I was a little bit surprised when the Dolphins took Jalen Phillips as opposed to an obvious stud in Gregory Rousseau, who saw his draft stock plummet throughout the 2020 season. I was really surprised by the fact that Jalen Phillips was drafted the first edge rusher off the board. I mean, he's looked great. He's looked okay so far. Again, he's had a lot of tackles this season. He got his first solo sack against the Tom Brady in week 5. But I think he's going to have a pretty average career in comparison to some of the other names on our list, and I don't know. I don't have very much hope for him, and I don't have too many criticisms about him. That's all I can really say. Let's talk about his teammate, Gregory Rousseau, who's taking the 30th pick from the same college to the Buffalo Bills. He's looked pretty great this season with 18 tackles and 3 sacks, and an interception, which some of the other edge rushers can't quite claim for themselves this year. That interception coming in the Sunday night bout against the Chiefs and Patrick Mahomes. What do you think about Gregory Rousseau, Zach?
Yeah, that interception, and give him credit for that. He showed why he used to play wide receiver in high school with that interception against Mahomes. But yeah, he's an athlete, and I think he'll be the best edge rusher that we've seen from this rookie class, starting every game so far this season for this stacked Buffalo Bills defense. And you already said it with 18 tackles, and now getting his first career interception. I think his career is on the rise, and I think he'll make at least 2 Pro Bowls by the time he retires.
I think he's going to be a great edge rusher in the NFL. He's going to be an absolute nightmare for quarterbacks across the league. He practically already is. He has so much raw talent, and I was surprised when he fell to the 30th pick, because earlier in that year, he was basically given the number 1 pick if it weren't for, anybody else somehow. If it weren't for anyone named Trevor Lawrence, Gregory Rousseau probably would have been the number 1 pick. He fell all the way to number 30. I mean,
yeah,
this is an absolute talent. There's so much potential. There's so much raw talent. Greg Rousseau is incredible, and I think he's going to be an absolute staple in the Bills defense. I'm not giving him just 2 Pro Bowls. I'm going to give him 4 or 5 at least. Hall of Famer.
Wow, there you go. Big, bold claim right there.
Put it in the books. Let's talk about someone who I would also probably say is a Hall of Famer, but we'd all know that I was being biased. Odafe Oweh, who's taken the very next pick from Penn State to the Baltimore Ravens, has 13 tackles, 3 sacks, 2 forced fumbles, and a fumble recovery, that being the one that won the game against the Kansas City Chiefs. What do you think about Odafe Oweh?
Yeah, taken just 1 pick later, as you said, and pretty much the same exact talent as Rousseau, and shown exactly why they were taken back to back. I think they gonna have similar careers, and they're showing that if you can start in either the Ravens defense or the Bills defense as a rookie, you've got to be a pretty special raw talent, and I think both of these guys are, and are showing why they have already caused turnovers in the first opening games of their career. So credit to those guys, and I think they'll be around for years to come. We'll be talking about them on this podcast or another podcast for the next 10 years.
Absolutely. Odafe Oweh is just an incredible talent. Obviously, I am obliged to watch the Ravens games every single week. I didn't do it this week because I thought it was going to be a blowout, and it wasn't, so kind of disappointed about that. He's a great raw talent, as was said as he was coming out of the draft, but his biggest criticism was that he didn't have a single sack in the 2020 season for Penn State, which clearly is a bunch of BS, because he is an absolute monster against NFL O-lines. Again, 3 sacks so far this season. He's 1 behind the sack leader. 2 forced fumbles, including one on Clyde Edwards-Helaire to win a game. This guy is an absolute stud. I think he's going to be a great staple in the Ravens defense. I'm not going to start calling for Hall of Fame just yet, just because I don't want to be biased,
Yeah, but Hall of Fame has got to be a different caliber of a player, and I think it's impossible to say for almost any rookie ever to project him as a Hall of Famer, but he's certainly got the potential to make a Hall of Fame case and definitely make a few Pro Bowls, but we'll see how his long career pans out, hopefully.
Someone who's not making the Hall of Fame in their respective sport is Ben Simmons. Let's talk about the quote-unquote Ben Simmons of today's podcast, Darrell Taylor, who leads the league in sacks by rookies with 4 whole sacks. He has 12 total tackles and a forced fumble on the year. He was drafted in 2020, number 48 by Seattle from the Tennessee Volunteers. What do you think about Darrell Taylor, Zach?
Yeah, whatever rookie, Ben Simmons, whatever you want to call him, I'll tell you that he's one of the best defensive players that the Seahawks have right now. Has a
Which
sack.
isn't saying much.
Doesn't say as much as it used to with their Legion of Boom now long gone, but having a sack on any team in every game this season besides one is definitely worthy of credit, as well as forcing a fumble and having multiple tackles in every single game. So I'll give him credit for what he's done so far, whether we count him as a rookie or not. He's a legit player that's going to pop up on every scouting report for the next few years when you're playing the Seahawks and have to face Darrell Taylor.
I think he's a very special talent, and I think that the Seahawks have found themselves a nice building piece for a rebuild on their weakened defense. Obviously, again, long gone are the days of the Legion of Boom. It's time to start reforming a new Legion of Boom, so to speak. And I think Darrell Taylor is going to be a great centerpiece for that, and I think that Seahawks fans for a long time are going to love this guy as a player, and I think quarterbacks are going to fear him as a player. I wouldn't put him at the same talent level as Greg Rousseau and Odafe Owe, but he's certainly going to be he's going to be a staple piece of that defense.
Yep, he'll be a key piece for the Seahawks for a long time, which is why he's in this podcast and we're talking about him. But yeah, when you're comparing him to Rousseau, Odafe Owe, and Jalen Phillips, I'll say he'll get third place above Jalen Phillips, but
I agree.
Unable to edge out Owe and Gregory Rousseau.
Let's talk about that man, Darrell Taylor's quarterback on the other side of the ball, Russell Wilson, who you seem to be slandering a lot in my text messages lately. So I think it's time for you to tell me whether or not Russell Wilson is a top quarterback in today's NFL.
I don't think Russell Wilson's the top quarterback in the NFL anymore.
Here we go. Tell me all about it.
Not surprised by your reaction, but Russell Wilson, he had a good first week of the season against the Colts, but we saw what the Ravens did against the Colts today, and besides the Colts, he hasn't done much. And I think if you give almost any other quarterback the weapons that he has with DK Metcalf, Chris Carson in the backfield, as well as Tyler Lockett,
I'd like to remind you that he's missing 2 of those right now.
There's a lot more that other quarterbacks will be able to do than what Russell Wilson is doing right now with those weapons.
So far this season, he's 9th in touchdowns with 10 touchdowns and has only thrown a singular interception. That all within the last 5 games. 2 touchdowns a game, not horrible, not incredible either, but certainly worthy of top 10. Certainly worthy of being a top 10 quarterback. He was on pace for a 4,000-yard season, even when he wasn't injured. Obviously, with the injury, it's not going to be the case. Again, him getting surgery and being out for a month. It's Geno Smith's season, and I'm all for that, but get well soon, Russell Wilson. You're going to be a top 10 quarterback in the league when you come back, because you currently are. He was the 12th overall player in this year's NFL 100 rankings. What reason could you possibly believe that Russell Wilson is overrated? He's incredible.
Overrated. I'd say he's on the borderline for top 10, but I've seen too many people calling for. You forget that Russell Wilson was in the running for MVP last season by some fans, and I don't
The first
see
half,
him.
maybe, but he had a bit of a collapse going into the second half of the season.
Yeah,
But
and
the whole team kind of did, you know? Their defense looked absolutely atrocious last year. I think it's the same situation that Patrick Mahomes is going through this year, is what Russell Wilson went through in the second half of the season last year when their defense started realizing, oh yeah, we're the Seattle defense. We're not that great. Worst pass defense in the league last year. Of course, Russell Wilson is not going to look great. He's practically chucking the ball, hoping that the defense never has to touch the field.
yeah, I think Russell Wilson last season is what Patrick Mahomes is this season, praying for a bad defense. But thing is, we haven't seen or Russell Wilson have those pre-Patrick Mahomes type games of when he did have a good defense. And talking about those top 10 quarterbacks, I will list off the top of my head right now: Mahomes, Josh Allen, Tom Brady, Lamar Jackson, Aaron Rodgers, Kyler Murray, Matthew Stafford, Justin Herbert, Ryan Tannehill, Dak Prescott.
I can
There's
agree
10
about
right
Dak
there.
Prescott and being in the top 10. I'm not so sure about Justin Herbert just yet. I think Justin Herbert's kind of number 11, and I would say that Ryan Tannehill's number 12. But those are not top 10 quarterbacks.
I'm taking every single one of those quarterbacks over Matthew Stafford. We have Justin Herbert this week go 400 yards and 4 touchdowns. Have Ryan Tannehill tear apart the Jags, which
Isn't
saying
saying
much, but
anything, really.
but he's also doing it without Julio Jones,
Who
and
you said wasn't going to have a good season.
and we've seen Matthew Stafford, everything he's done for the Rams, beating Russell Wilson and a quarter of Geno Smith, when Geno Smith actually looked better than Russell Wilson did against the Rams. So
Geno Smith is an incredible QB.
Russell Wilson is in the top half of the quarterbacks, but when I see Russell Wilson as a top 5 quarterback, I just have to laugh, and I think it's even debatable if he's a top 10 quarterback right now in the league.
I don't think it's debatable that he's a top 10 quarterback. I can kind of see where you're coming from, that he's probably not a top 5 quarterback, and I somewhat agree with your top 5 this year. But I'm speechless. There's not much I can formulate in my head to say to something like this.
I don't think Russell Wilson's as mobile as he used to be either, though.
He's not quite as mobile as he used to be, but he's established himself as an incredible strong arm quarterback. He has about the same mobility that Baker Mayfield does still, so he can still roll out of the pocket and, make time for himself. Again, he's a little bit hindered by an injured finger, but there's just no way that he's not a top 10 quarterback in the league. I don't think there's a debate for that.
He was top 10 previously, but
he was top 5 previously.
I think he was top 5 previously at one point.
Last year, I'd say he was top 5.
But I think Russell Wilson's career is now started to decline, with him at 32 years old and probably being 33 years old by the time he comes back. I'm not seeing him going too much longer being a high-level quarterback that the Seahawks thought he was, because you remember him being a third-round draft pick. He wasn't this end-all be-all out of college, so...
Well, we'll certainly see his longevity 5 years from now when we're still doing this podcast to a small amount of viewers still, probably. Let's move on to this week's lightning fast picks. We got week 6 coming up. Let's just jump straight into it, all right? So, Thursday night football, we have the Tampa Bay Buccaneers and the Philadelphia Eagles. Go.
Pretty easy on that one. Never gonna predict too many times against the Bucks, especially against an NFC East team. So Tampa Bay.
I absolutely agree. You just can't discount Tom Brady. Next up, we have the Dolphins and the Jags. 9:30 a.m. Oh, that's a London game. They always give London the awful games. Who do you think's going to win between the Dolphins and the Jags?
Two teams that don't look great, but I think the Dolphins look slightly better than the Jags, which isn't too hard to do after losing 20 straight, and I think 20 turns into 21 straight losses for the Jags.
I just simply can't discount Trevor Lawrence over Jacoby Brissett here. I'm going to have to pick the Jags to finally break that streak. Packers and the Bears.
Always good when these two teams match up, but the Packers every week after week 1 have looked like one of the best teams in the NFL, and I don't see any reason for that to not continue to happen. I'll take the Packers in this one.
I'm going to have to take the Packers as well. Bengals and the Lions. I think this is a pretty easy one. I'm going with Joe Burrow and the Bengals.
Yep, Joe Burrow over the Lions. Not expecting this one to be as close for the Lions, so maybe they'll be able to not lose on a last-second field goal this time.
That happens. I'm so sorry, Lions fans. Texans and the Colts. I'm taking the Colts. They almost just beat the Ravens. I don't see any reason why they wouldn't crush the Houston Texans.
Yeah, the Colts have one of the best run defenses in the league, and the Texans
only have
running backs. So I'm taking the Colts in this one pretty easily.
Rams and the Giants. I'm going to take Matthew Stafford any day over Daniel Jones or...
Yeah, I'm taking Matthew Stafford over a fully
Mike Glennon.
Healthy Giants team, but now with the Giants' 3 best players all injured, I'm even more likely to take the Rams, and that's
to call Daniel Jones a 3 best player on the Giants is truly disappointing, but it is what it is. Chiefs and the Washington football team. If you say the Washington football team, I'm ending the episode.
So this is going to be an ugly one, and the Chiefs don't look good. They have the worst defense in the league. Washington, though, doesn't have a great offense that's going to capitalize, and unfortunately, I'll take the Chiefs to keep this episode going and hopefully prove myself wrong.
The Chiefs aren't going to blow out the football team. I say it's going to be a close one, but I think the Chiefs have to bounce back with this one. I'm taking the Chiefs any day. The Vikings and the Panthers. I'm going to take the Vikings here. I can't doubt Kirk Cousins against.
Yeah, the Panthers looked good in the first 3 weeks of the season, had the best defense in the league, and
against nobodies.
I know the Stephon Gilmore trade I'm a huge fan of, but obviously he's not going to be able to play just yet, so at this point I'll take the Vikings over the Panthers.
Alright, Chargers and the Ravens. That's a very tough one. I'm going to let you go first.
That's going to be a really good game, but with how bad the Ravens looked, having to need to score 22 points against the Colts tonight, and how good the Chargers looked against the Browns, I'm going to take the Chargers in that one.
I absolutely agree. Justin Herbert is a great quarterback, not quite top 10 just yet, but we'll see what happens. I'm still going to take him over the Baltimore Ravens torn apart defense. Cardinals and the Browns. That is an incredible game.
Incredible game, but the Browns just gave up over 45 points to the Chargers, and I think the Cardinals have
a little bit better.
So I'm gonna take the Cardinals in that one.
I'm gonna have to take my Super Bowl pick as well here. I'm gonna pick the Arizona Cardinals, but I'm not gonna discount the Cleveland Browns just yet. The Raiders with a new coach and the Denver Broncos.
Yep, John Gruden resigned just a few hours ago, so he'll no longer be leading the Raiders team, but I think they'll be able to figure it out. And with John Gruden gone, I expect an improvement in this Raiders team, and they'll beat the Broncos on the road.
I think it's just too much of a distraction, and I think the Broncos are going to capitalize. Teddy Bridgewater's a great quarterback, and the Broncos have a surprisingly good defense still, so I think I'm going to pick the Denver Broncos in this one. Dallas Cowboys and the New England Patriots. Cowboys, easily.
Unfortunately, as a Washington fan, it pains me to say that the Cowboys look good, but as part of our job on the podcast, I'll have to admit that the Cowboys do look good, and I'll take them over the Patriots.
Sunday Night Football, the Seattle Seahawks and the Pittsburgh Steelers.
After talking bad about Russell Wilson just a few minutes ago, I think I'm going to have to pick him to win this game on Sunday with an even more
Not him.
veteran Ben Roethlisberger and Juju Smith-Schuster now out for the season, so hopefully the Seahawks will have Chris Carson back, and I expect them to beat the Steelers.
Let's make this clear. It is not Russell Wilson going to beat the Steelers this week. It is Geno Smith going to beat the Steelers this week. I'm all in on the Geno Smith hype train. I've always thought Geno Smith was a great quarterback, and I was so confused that he was out of the league so soon. Give me Geno Smith and the Seattle Seahawks. I can't wait to hear the Geno's chants.
Geno Smith on that one, but yeah, I'm expecting a low-scoring game, but Seahawks will still come out on top.
Finally, Monday Night Football. We have a good one lined up between the Bills and the Titans. Well, what would have been a good one last year.
Is going to be a good one again this year. The Bills, strong run defense against the Titans, who only know how to run the ball with King Henry. And for this
only
one,
know how to run the ball, but Tannehill's a top 10 quarterback.
He is a top 10 quarterback, but not as good as Josh Allen, and unable to throw the ball as much as he would probably like with Derrick Henry in the backfield. So I'm still going to take the Buffalo Bills after their dominant win over the Patrick Mahomes led Chiefs.
Give me the Buffalo Bills. They're going to be the Super Bowl champions over the Arizona Cardinals to me this season, but they've got to win a few games in the regular season to get there. I'm going to pick the Buffalo Bills for this one, and that is the end of our episode. How we feeling? Week 6. Made it this far. This is our 6th episode recorded. You got plenty more to come.
Week 6 looks like a heck of a week with some really good looking matchups, and now we start to enter the bye weeks, which good for some teams, not so good for other teams. But yeah, we've got games all over the place with some Thursday night football, some Sunday morning football, as well as some Sunday night and Monday night. So football is back. We're entering the parts of the season where the games seem to matter a little bit more now, and looking forward to week 6.
It's great to see a face on the league. You know, every team's, you finally know their identity. It's easier to predict them, and it's easier to know which games are going to be good ones and which ones aren't. That is all we have time for, though, so I think it's time for us to lock up and shut down.